A little while ago, Vimlark approached several game jams with the idea of a game jam competition in the style of game shows like Chopped. So, of course I joined. If you don't know who Vimlark is, he's got a YouTube channel where he does game jams and he makes a game about homicidal monkeys who are given access to firearms. There are several rules around this game jam and they should serve to give all the games in it a similar theme. We were tasked to recreate a retro game and transform it into our very own game, but we also have to apply the restriction of can't stop moving to the game. There were several groups of contestants and the one that I was in was given the retro game of Asteroids. So now I have to make a game based on asteroids that incorporates the theme cannot stop moving. Oh yeah, and we have to do this all in under 48 hours, although those 48 hours can be spread out over several days non-consecutively. So as usual, I started out with a bit of planning. I decided that I would make my game 3D and low poly. I had just done a 3D low poly game set in space for my last game jam, but oh well, these games are pretty different. I decided to try out a 2.5D perspective for this game because I had never done that before. Plus, I feel like asteroids movement in a 3D environment would feel strange. In order to provide a twist for the game, I decided that you should have to defend a planet from asteroids instead of just defending yourself. But I still had to incorporate that cannot stop moving theme, and instead of actually using this for the movement system, I decided to stick it on the health mechanic instead. The energy of the planet you are defending is constantly decreasing, and it also decreases whenever asteroid hits it or you accidentally shoot the planet. I decided to have a set amount of waves that you have to beat, as well as a shop that you can buy upgrades at in between waves. And that was about all the planning I felt I had to do, so I got started. The 48 hours was spread out over about a week for me. This was useful as I was pretty busy during that week and weekend. I didn't really have 2 whole days to dedicate to writing asteroid fanfiction. I began just by setting up the asteroid style movement. It was pretty much just asteroids but in 2.5D. The perspective wasn't too hard to get working at first. It was basically the same as 2D, but I had to make sure to lock its rotation and position in certain axes to make sure that the rigid body does not get pushed out of place. I made the camera follow the movement of the ship, and I also reused the skybox I made for the last game jam. I think the skybox actually looks better in the context of this game because you can't see the weird seams on its edges. I decided that it would be a good idea to get all the art for this game out of the way quickly. I didn't need to do too much of it, just a ship, a planet, and some asteroids. The ship was modeled off of some references I found online and looks pretty cartoony, but works well for a 3D version of the asteroid ship in my opinion. The planet is basically the same as the one I made for the last game jam, and the asteroids are pretty basic too. Now that I had the movement finished as well as all the models I would need, I decided to finish up on the rest of the core gameplay. The most important part of the gameplay is shooting, so I made it. Shooting is just instantiating a bullet object, which is a stretched capsule with a lot of glow. The 2.5D perspective was not too much of an issue still at this point, as long as I made sure to point the bullets in the correct directions. I then added some health to the planet as well as collision detection. In order to display the health, I put in a basic UI health bar. I also made the bullet damage the planet whenever it hits it, that way there's a bit more of a consequence for just spamming the shoot button. This is based off a game called Asteroids, so I should probably add the main characters to the game. So I stuck them in and made them take damage from the bullets. After that, it was time to figure out how to spawn them. I decided that a good approach was to spawn them in a circle around the planet, and after a little bit of googling, I found the math for doing something like this, and like any self-respecting programmer, I stole it. These asteroids spawn in, point at the planet, and destroy themselves while dealing damage whenever they hit, but they can be destroyed by reducing their HP by hitting them with bullets. In order to make it feel a little bit better whenever you hit the asteroid, I made a super basic explosion particles. They literally are just spears which change color a bit, but I think it looks nice. The asteroids also give you a bit of energy when destroyed, which doesn't really make sense, but whatever. At this point in time, the movement in the game was feeling kind of awful. The in-game loop wasn't working too well either because the planet would go off screen and you'd constantly have to be frantically checking the corners of the map for asteroids. It was hard to tell where they all were. So I decided to switch the camera to just be a static, more zoomed out one. This solved both of these issues and also made the game a bit more similar to the original Asteroids. After making asteroids and stuff, it was time to begin putting it all together. So I made a basic first wave by using a coroutine with wait for seconds to spawn in the asteroids, which was a pretty easy way to go about it, even though it looks kinda ugly in code. I built this placeholder wave, that way I can start on some menus. I plan on having a menu pop up in between waves where you can buy some upgrades and stuff. I started off by just making that menu appear and giving it a button to start the next wave. But then I got to work on the store. I first added money that you gain on destroying asteroids plus some UI. Then I laid out all the store UI and got them all functioning with a bit of work. Now it was time to make some guns, which I figured would be the least sort of fun, but it turned out to be the worst part of development for one reason. The game is in 2.5D. This made it so that it was incredibly hard for me to get the gun to shoot at the mouse. If I use the normal way that I make bullets go forward, which is by using a rigid body add force and pointing the bullet where I want it to go, the issue was that none of the transform.up, transform.right, or transform.forward directions worked for me. They simply shot in the incorrect direction or axis, and I tried so many things. I rotated the prefab, used vectors instead of transforms, added parents to the bullets to make it rotate better. At one point, I even made it so there was a box that set its positions to the cursor at all times and the bullet just points at it before moving. But this somehow didn't work either. I eventually just had to drop off the aiming at the mouse thing altogether from the game, after wasting an incredible amount of time on it. So I made some more guns, a shotgun, an assault rifle, and a railgun. I was sort of running out of time at this point, so I didn't realize until after the jam, but the railgun does not work at all. So if you want to play the game, don't buy the railgun. After that fiasco, I added some camera shake to the game as well as a start menu before the game starts and explains how the game works. After that, I simply made the rest of the stages a lose menu, asteroids with more health, and switched up the colors of the skybox. As a final touch, I added some very basic sound effects into the game. This game jam was definitely one of the weirder ones I've done in a while. I think my game has some good things going for it, most of the art style and visuals. It's also got a pretty decent amount of content thanks to the shop and amount of waves. But the gameplay loop is pretty unsatisfying and the game feels unpolished. The asteroids don't feel good to destroy and the game can be pretty unfair at times. I still think it turned out okay, but I don't think that this jam really yielded as nearly as good of a game as the last few that I've done this year. I think it was still a fun experience and I look forward to seeing the videos that Vimlark does over Ready Set Jam, as I'm sure they'll be great. This game is available on itch.io as always. Be sure to subscribe for more videos and because it makes me feel good. Liking is also pretty cool. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh yeah, also I ended up being the one chopped in my group after the first round, so...